başlayalım mı?
Sonra tamam, benim sıram gelince yaparsın.
Ayhan hocam şimdi önce...
Ben en sonuncuyum.
Siz en sonuncusunuz.
Tamam, çok iyi, çok ben.
Birazcık soluklanın.
Nefes alayım.
Tabii.
Çok iyi.
Okay, I guess we can start now. Welcome to the last session of today's program. This session is titled Identity Politics. We have three presenters. I would like to start with Professor Yıldız Atasoy from Simon Fraser University. Well, she has a very impressive, let's say, CV. Her main interests include global political economy, political sociology, neoliberal capitalism, social change and development, political economy of agri-food systems, gender relations, Islamic politics, and well, she's a very industrious scholar as well. She has books titled Global Shaping and Its Alternatives, Turkey, Islamists and Democracy, Hegemonic Transitions and the State, and Islam's Marriage with Neoliberalism. And at this moment she is preparing to publish two more books. The first one is coming on September 2013, Global Economic Crisis and the Politics of Diversity from Palgrave. And in 2014, her another book is going to be published by Routledge, Supermarketization of Agriculture, a comparative research on Turkey and Brazil. Today, her talk is titled Politics Without Guarantees, the AKP Government and the Headscarf Ban in Turkey. Yeah, Professor Yıldız, the floor is yours, and you have 20 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Welcome to our panel. Please let me thank the organizing committee for all your hard work and your never. Please let me thank to the organizing committee for all your hard work and your never failing Turkish hospitality. Does that work? Is it working now? Shall I repeat my thank you? Sure, why not? All right. I would like to thank the organizing committee for all your hard work and never failing Turkish hospitality. It's a great organization. Turkey's traditional political elite often views the AK Party's EU-oriented democratic reforms with suspicion and as an attempt to institutionalize Islamization by stealth. The AK Party has often been accused of gradually shifting the emphasis in state ideology from Kemalism to Islamism. Kemalism is the official state ideology of the Turkish state. It represents a path taken by civil military bureaucratic cadres in their institutionalization of national sovereignty, mainly through state-led economic developmentalism and secular nationalism known as laiklik. As a specific genealogy of citizenship, laiklik produced the Muslim citizen concept, which combines a state-regulated, faith-based ethos with the virtue of state amplification and state loyalty. This is how the Republican model of citizenship became entangled with the Turkish nationalist version of Islam in monitoring the conduct of citizens. The public sphere of politics thus becomes open to secularly motivated religious renormativization as long as religion remains within the boundaries of the state regulation. T.H. Marshall has defined citizenship as a full membership in the community, including rights and responsibilities. Although Marshall refers to political membership with the state, Yuval Davis has developed the notion of the multi-layered citizen to show that people are usually members of multiple social categories coexisting in society. According to Margaret Somers, the citizenship ethic should also reflect a plurality of normative influences in society. However, in Turkey, citizen demands for rights are frequently questioned in relation to whether they are proper. My analysis of the headscarf ban helps us to rethink a concept of citizenship in which religious considerations have significant bearing, and in which social rights are at once both religious and civic. As the analysis below shows, the rethinking of relations between religion and politics involves extending the moral normative standards and commitments into citizenship rights, rights that endow equal social recognition. This is a highly contentious process, as various social groups and movements struggle for the power to interpret reality, reshape culture, and position themselves in history. At stake here is the transformation of the historically privileged political alliance structure of the Kemalist state, as the AK Party is adopting a more liberal democratic political stance and a neoliberal market-oriented economic model. The power players of this reworking include various societal groups which have been affected by deep class and region-based inequalities and the social cultural injustice of state-led developmentalism of the previous era in Turkish history. These groups include newly emerging Muslim capitalists from smaller cities in Anatolia, Muslim women with concerns over the headscarf ban, and those involved in the Kurdish movement. Holding class, region, and culture-based grievances against status developmentalism, these groups view themselves as victims of social injustice, marginalization, and exclusion. They are mobilized in repositioning themselves within history through a process of restoring rights, political and economic entitlements, and cultural recognition in the context of Turkey's EU membership bid. The AK Party's reworking of a social change model thus includes the political and pedagogical shaping of a general normative position in the articulation of Muslim ethical principles of human dignity and justice, combined with neoliberal cultural ideals. It's also frequently supplemented by the liberal democratic concepts of individual human rights and freedoms. In short, a belief in the ontological primacy of a neoliberal market economy model has been an ethical reference point for various Muslim groups in their normative appeal to social justice and democracy. The AK Party is the key player in the current restructuring of the state-citizen relations. The three most contentious areas in the AK Party's articulation of a social change trajectory consist of the military's frequent interventions in politics, the Kurdish issue, and Muslim women's wearing of the headscarf. Each of these three contentious areas ties the AK Party policies to norms of liberal democracy, personal freedom, and cultural expression. In this way, the AK Party is gradually reworking the state-centric bureaucratic ethos of Kemalism and articulating an argument for transforming power relations within the state through a normative orientation towards market economy and liberal democracy. From this perspective, the AK Party government has made significant improvements in dealing with the first two issues, mainly military and the Kurdish issue, but it has effectively withdrawn its commitment to lifting the ban on Muslim women's wearing of the headscarf since the 2008 party closure case. The ban continues to be in effect for almost 3 decades now, since the 1980 military coup. There has never been a law in Turkey which include an outright ban on Muslim women's Islamic dress. Nevertheless, Western-style clothing was a Kemalist cultural imperative for women's presence and representation in the public sphere. Those who did not comply were quickly singled out as culturally ill-suited for modernity and displaced from the public sphere of employment, education, and politics. The wearing of the headscarf outside the home was generally accepted as customary social behaviors done by our mothers or grandmothers, etc. However, women were expected to take it off if they desired to be present in the state sphere of paid work, education, or politics. As the number of university students wearing the headscarf and long coat began to increase from the 1960s onward, and given that there was no legal ban, school administrators used bylaws to prevent students from wearing the headscarf. Since the 1980 military coup, female students were banned entering classes wearing the headscarf. In 1983, the Council of Higher Education, YÖK, required university police officers and security employees to inspect student clothing at university gates, entrance gates. Those who insisted on wearing the headscarf were either refused admittance to their schools or subject to disciplinary measures, including expulsion. Still others decided to leave school rather than expose their hair. And some students even chose to wear a wig over their headscarves, and they looked really ridiculous by doing so, but they did it. Those who did not wish to jeopardize their education chose to reveal their hair. In 1984, after the election of the Motherland Party to government, YÖK allowed students to adopt a European-style turban, which is tied behind the head and reveals the neck and ears. However, students' actual turban-wearing practices have taken a different turn, as they adopted a different form of head covering, folding the headscarf neatly under the chin to conceal the neck and completely cover the hair, ears, back of the head, and shoulders. 3 or 4 pins are often used to prevent the scarf from slipping and revealing the hair. From 1984 onwards, women wearing the headscarf have come to be addressed as turbanlılar, women with a turban. These controversial developments resulted in yet another YÖK bylaw in 1998 after the so-called soft military coup of 1997, which completely banned the wearing of headscarf or turban at schools by designating it the main axis of the laïc Islamist political divide. The ban remains in effect. The implementation of the clothing bylaw caused widespread anxiety among students, their families, and other members of society. Although there is no accurate statistical data, it is known that hundreds of thousands of students have been expelled from their schools. Given that many of the students wearing a headscarf did not attend classes regularly because of the ban, they were essentially disqualified from continuing their education. This is despite the fact that a vast majority of women in Turkey do not see the turban as problematic in any possible way. By connecting their concerns over the headscarf ban to state's violation of human rights, these women are demanding that the state be held accountable for the democratic rights of individuals. Their actions have been transferred to a legal foundation in the courts, and thousands of students filing court applications, including the European Court of Human Rights. Muslim women's politics on the headscarf ban is entangled with men's politics. The AK Party and the pro-Islamic Welfare Party before it had defined the headscarf ban in terms of women's democratic rights. However, the military and judicial bureaucracy have placed both the AK Party and the former Welfare Party under suspicion of anti-laic charges. As a result, the male leadership cadres in these political parties have chosen to withdraw their active support of Muslim women's headscarf. When threatened by the state bureaucracy, the survival of political parties appears to be more important than the pursuit of liberal, democratic, transformative politics. In deciding to pursue or not to pursue a transformational politics around the women's headscarf issue, the AK Party and its male leadership have greater political agency over women's issues. However, this is more complex than it might appear. As AK Party dominated Parliament's approval in 2008 of a constitutional amendment to lift a ban on wearing the headscarf in university, intensified the accusation by military and judicial bureaucrats that the AK Party was engaged in Islamization by STALT, and hence justified the party closure case. The AK Party avoided being closed down by the Constitutional Court when the courts ruled against banning it on 30 July 2008. Nonetheless, the party was certainly intimidated, as 10 out of 11 judges on the Constitutional Court agreed that the AK Party has become a focal point for anti-secular activities and needs a strong warning. Moreover, the decision included a clause stating that, quote, if attempts are made by the AK Party in the future to take steps considered against laically, the chief prosecutor will immediately open a new closure case in which the Constitutional Court will not have to examine it from scratch, but merely continue from the previous case, end of quote. Although the AK Party government passed a law in 2012 allowing students to wear headscarf in schools providing religious education and in Quran lessons, a more general headscarf ban in university and public sphere of employment persists. The AK Party's political vision report for 2023 does not refer to the lifting of the ban either. It is just not dealt with. My own belief is that the closure case has decisively shifted the balance of power in favor of the high bureaucracy, thus weakening the AK Party government's ability to pursue a coherent social change policy. Under threat by the Constitutional Court for the banning of the AK Party, the AK Party leadership has chosen to entangle itself from the headscarf movement. Thus, the headscarf issue remains unresolved. This may lead women with issues surrounding the headscarf ban to gain greater political agency of their own and develop a more focused resistance. They are now players in Turkey's current contentious politics of citizenship. To provide ethnographic insight into the politics of the headscarf ban from the perspective of women who embody an Islamic ethos in public life, I have conducted interviews with 40 female students from Gazi University, METÜ, Middle East Technical University, Ankara University in Ankara. Information gathered from these interviews points to a common headscarf narrative. The interconnectedness of a moral, ethical commitment with individual freedom and human rights, rather than an appeal to Islam as an exclusive or closed framework of religious morality. This narrative sums up the experience of the young, pious female university students whom I interviewed, but it cannot be accurately viewed as randomly experienced. These students' narrative has evolved through their activism in the pedagogical task of connecting statist laiklik to the state's violation of human rights. This possibility provokes an argument for citizenship, which presents religious women's politics as a situated conversation on the diverse social conditions of other socially excluded groups. In the interest of leaving more time for questions and discussions, I will read only one interview. This is a pseudonym name. I called her Hatice. Hatice said the following, quote, In the past, Islamic women with headscarves were not interested in higher education and the improvement of their position in society. The state educational system helped women of higher social status to advance in the educational system. They had no interest wearing the headscarf, they mostly earned professional degrees. In the past, those who wanted to be more religious stayed away from public life. They were more interested in issues of moral uprightness, character formation, and domestic matters than higher education and professional employment. But now the situation is different. We are more aware of our secondary social status in society, and we want to change it. We want to have a better life. We are more conscious that our head coverage and our religiosity should not prevent us from improving our social position in life. As we put this heightened awareness at the center of our mobilization, opposition against our headscarves has become more rigid. It is because those who oppose our head covering do not want to see us there with them in their higher institutional positions of the state and the economy, end of quote. All the students I interviewed agree that the headscarf ban serves to protect the privileged position of the traditional upper classes from the formation of an alternative upper class of modest Muslim families arising from the Anatolian hinterlands. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, well, thank you very much. Your time is really up. Okay, our next speaker is Sultan Tepe. She's an associate professor at University of Illinois at Chicago. She has wide interest areas, but her current research interests are related to comparative analysis of religious parties, moderation of religious parties and groups, political manifestations, and civic engagements of religious identities in global cities. She is the author of the book from Stanford University Press, titled Beyond Sacred and Secular, Politics of Religion in Israel and Turkey. And her new book is coming soon. And the title is America's Islam, Muslims in Chicago. And today she's going to give a speech on escaping polarization with a question mark.
I changed the title
Okay.
a little bit.
Sorry.
That's all right.
Yeah, escaping the polarization trap. Okay, the floor is yours. Yeah, you have to.
Thank you.
20 minutes. Thank you.
I want to thank the organizer, especially Professor Jizra and Shana, for their kind invitation. This is really inspiring and important conference, and the timing of it is really important. I think it's time for us to reflect on the 10 years of AKP rule in Turkey. The focus of my talk today is polarization. So what I would like to do, I would like to give you a brief overview of the term. Then I will look at some of the basic trends to question if we have a polarization in Turkey. Then I'll use an experimental data as political psychology experiment with it in Turkey. And then, as the title suggests, if you study polarization, the question can be avoided and how we can deal with it. So I will reflect on some of the political psychology research and to see if we can learn anything from them. So the polarization is part of daily discourse, not only in Turkey, but in the world politics. If we, so let me, is this on?
It should be.
Sorry, I'm, orada, çalışmıyor, biraz daha olacak. Okay. So despite the increasing interest in polarization, it's a brand new term. If you look at the Library of Congress, can you click? Does it work? Okay. So I'm sorry. So we have to do it manually. If you look at the Library of Congress, what is interesting, prior to 1970, it's almost impossible to find a book on political polarization. So if you look at the trend, in 2012, there are around 15 books. So it's rather new term in terms of domestic politics. If you look at the Turkish media, this was an interesting finding. Around 1990, the term gained some salience, but all of these different newspapers, around 28 and 2010, we see the highest number of reference to polarization. So the root of the term is, it's actually in sciences, just like many other terms in political science, we adopted it from science, and I was reading on it just to see how the term inspired different people. It seems that it refers to oscillation between different waves and refers to one directional movement of the light. If there's anyone here can explain better, but it's rooted in the movements of the lights. The term was traced back to Arthur Kessler, who wrote a book called The God That Failed. The title is misleading because it's criticism of communism and the failure of communism, and he's the first one used the term, and he refers to disintegration of the middle class, and he says that when the middle class was facing the hurricane of centralization, when they faced this approaching hurricanes, many of them were faced the options of just being passive victim or taking one of the sides. So from 1949, when we use the term polarization, usually it has negative connotation. If you look at the titles of the books in the Library of Congress, but you will see that many scholars in the United States, South Korea, India, former communist countries, they are using the term. And the titles are, just to give you some sense, Can We Talk? The Rise of Rude, Nasty, Stubborn Politics, or Partisan News That Matters, How Cable Media Polarized Politics, or Distrusted Polarized Parliament in South Korea. So the term covers a broad spectrum of countries, and it usually comes with a negative, pessimistic view of the future. So the fact that we're using it a lot in Turkey begs the question that to what extent we have polarization here, and if we have it, what form it takes, and if affects democratization process, and what role, if any, AK Party plays in it. So just like any good political scientist, I want to also give you some counter-argument. Although polarization is seen as negative, there are quite a few scholars in new genre. They say that maybe it's good for democracy, because if you have competing rival parties, they expose corruption more. So scholars of corruption seems to favor a level of polarization. And also some people feel that it might increase the coalition government's lifespan. So, and the third group says that polarization might be good for participation, because people participate more if they are polarized. But the literature is mixed there, because it seems that polarization might increase the participation of activists, but it has the negative impact on average people. They disengage from politics. One of the signs of political polarization, average people do not engage in politics as much. So the term has been used and measured in different ways. I want to mention all these. I know probably it's boring political science stuff, but because we use it, I think we need to pay attention to the literatures, especially the political scientists' treatment of the term. Because when we apply Turkey using all these different measurements, contradictory results emerge. One of the description is polarization is the widening ideological distance among main groups. So people cluster around extreme views. What happens, the people in the middle, these people who could play the role of reconciliation or conciliation, they decline. As a result, this is a really simple measurement. You just look at the groups and you look at the distance between two main groups. And if the distance is widening, we have polarization. It's a process. Kessler, the one who used the term first in 1949, he refers it as an accentuated differences. The second description is the presence and the number of anti-systemic or anti-state parties. So you look at the system and you look at how many anti-systemic and state parties you have, and you decide if a country is polarized or not. In these systems, catch-all parties or the center parties cannot reach out masses anymore because the anti-systemic parties are taking over. So these descriptions, widely used descriptions, especially in American politics, we have many authors investing their time and energy in this. Usually they use the same data, they come up with different conclusions. If you look at the title of the books in American politics, there are titles like, is polarization a myth? And some people would say that it's reality, so there's this really interesting exchange. But they disagree on their unit of analysis in a sense that if they look at the party elites or the parties or the masses. So overall, we have three different groups looking at party elites, media, and masses. So in this paper, I would like to look at masses because elite and media, usually these are the places people look at, and masses are hard to study. As a result, we don't have much research on people in general. Sorry, I'm going backward. If we try to understand polarization in Turkey, one of the challenges, none of these descriptions or discussions pay attention to the systemic factors. Part of my research is on Israel. Many countries like Israel and Turkey, parties law, the election laws, they do not allow extremist parties or the anti-state parties to compete. As a result, we have systemic constraints. It's not easy to find anti-systemic parties. So this party politics description of polarization doesn't really apply to Turkey. The other one, it's an interesting question because we can use survey data to understand if people are polarized. But what happens with survey data, there are a couple of issues. One is, usually we use this prefix or predetermined scale, left and right scale. People place themselves on 0 or 10. If they are left, usually they place themselves on 0. And if they are right, they place themselves on 10. But if the question about political polarization is widening distance, we are trying to measure something with fixed scales. So this is why using survey data is really questionable. Also, it's a universal trend in Turkey especially, but in the United States too. People usually go to the middle. They just place themselves at the center at 5, if it's a 7 scale at 4. So there's consensus almost in the literature, whatever we see in survey data, actual situation should be worse because of the midpoint bias. And I want to put all these, the description is, polarization is contested term, we need to define it and redefine it, and using survey data has its own problem. So all these caveats, despite all these caveats, I think still we can use the existing data. So what I will do from this point on, we'll look at the existing data and to ask the question, what happened to Turkish public, especially after 2002, but to have a comparative broader perspective, I will start from 1990, and I will use word value survey and the conservatism in Turkey data 2012, and my own experimental data from 2012. So if you look at the left-right spectrum using word values data, there is a significant shift, right-wing shift. In 2000, starting from 2002, there is a tendency to place people at 0.6 instead of 5. 1990 is almost a perfect bell distribution. You have 16% of the people on extreme right, 17% of the people extreme left. If you look at the distribution in 2007, the center, which used to be 40%, now it's 13%. So there is this declining tendency to place the respondents at the middle. And what is also interesting, if you look at the right side, 35% of the people place themselves at far right. Using the 0 to 10 scale, I define far right at 8 to 10. So we have this really significant right-wing shift in Turkey. Once again, it's significant because of the tendency of people move to the middle. That's more expected, and this seeing center at the 6, rather unusual. If we look at the AK Party supporters, what we see, 50%, more than 50% place themselves on the right and 30% around at the center, and very few, around 4% on the left side. It's the polar opposite. If you look at the Republican People's Party, the main oppositional party, it's the opposite, more than 60% on the left and around 20% at center. This is almost the polar opposite of AK Party supporters' placement. Religiosity is another question. I wanted to include it because there's always this question if Turkey is becoming a more religious country or not. If you look at the religiosity of people, in 1990, the level was really high. The question is how much significance you attribute to religion in your daily life. So the number of the proportion of people who attributed significant place in their religion in their daily life in 1990 was around 80%. To be precise, 84%. So in 2007, the number is around 90%, 91%. It's another significant shift. But these measurements, just like any survey questions, they are a little bit rough, and there are new research and survey data. They ask more nuanced questions, and they divided people into 3: modern, religious conservative, and traditional conservative. If you look at from this perspective, moderns are around 1/3 of the population, and religious conservatives are around 36, and traditional conservatives around 32. So maybe this gives us a better understanding of the religiosity of people in general. So if you put all these, it seems that Turkish society, the Turkish public has been transformed significantly from 1991, especially after 2002. But the question, does it really matter? What are the implications for democracy? One of the key questions, given the limitation of data, is trust question. There's a question that we use a lot. It's the simple question, can you trust people? Can people be trusted? And this question is taken seriously because of the social capital literature. If people trust each other, civil society is stronger in these countries. As a result, democratic processes, they work better. So social capital is taken seriously, and social trust usually is the question people use to measure it. Turkey's record on that is really concerning. Around 1990, 74% of people said that people can be trusted in general. And when we come to 2007, the number is 95%. Sorry, did I say people cannot be trusted? 76% said that people cannot be trusted, and the level is really high, 95% right now. So if you look at this chart, what you will see that Turkey is an outlier. Look at the yellow column. It's how many people reported that people cannot be trusted. I've been comparing Turkey with other countries, including Israel, which has serious problems. Turkey's social trust is depleting. It's really low. And if you look at the groups around 1990, people who placed themselves on the left, 20% said that people can be trusted. And the people who placed themselves on the right, only 6% said that people can be trusted. Now the order is really different. People on the left, very few people say that it's around 3% say that people can be trusted. On the right, it's a little bit higher, but overall, Turkey is a country that we have serious social trust problem. Participants, but sorry? No, this is overall public. But as I said, on the right, the trust is slightly higher, but still, it's really low. So it seems that whomever is in power, supporters of this group trust a little bit more, but overall level is so low. Anyway, it doesn't create any significant difference. So I don't have time, I want to jump really quickly. So that begs the question, if these people also disagree on the issues, and when we look at the issue positions, the picture is really different. People do not disagree on the positions, issue positions as much. There are two questions that I pick, one on laichism, to what extent we should reform it, the other one, Kurdish problem. The table is hard to read, but when it comes to laichism, the respondents are asked if they want to see secularism as it is, if it is laicism as it is, if laicism should be redefined, or they were given the option that they are in the center, whatever the center means to them, or they didn't respond. So just as AK Party supporters, around 48% said that it should stay the same. But Republican Party, the rate is much higher, it's 71%. So we see significant differences here, but still note that 20% of AK Party supporters said that it needs to be redefined. It's not an overwhelming majority. So Kurdish problem, when we look at the Kurdish problem, differences disappear, almost disappear. 34% of AK Party supporters and 29% of Republican Party supporters said that all different ethnic groups should accept Turkish. And then you can see some of the numbers, but the differences are really insignificant. So what we can, there's another question, how much they dislike the other party. This is the place that I think we should stop and pause. If you ask people about the parties, they would never ever vote. They would never consider them as a viable option. This is a place that political science meets psychology, because there's a new trend, especially in American politics, that maybe polarization is not so much about issues and ideologies, it's just about feelings, affects. People just do not like the other party for whatever the reason. So this is an area, maybe this question helps us, because party supporters, AK Party supporters and JHP supporters, Republican People's Party supporters, they really do not like the other party. Maybe issue positions are not that different, but there's the strong dislike of the other party. So I don't want to give the numbers, but you can see it. At the, oh, I'm going other way, sorry. This is why you shouldn't use PowerPoint unless you really, I never use PowerPoints, but I'm so jet lagged, I thought that you should see something at the background. Let me give really quickly, because I don't have time, the experimental survey we did. Experiment is really simple. So on top of this dislike of the other party, what we thought that, and also it's the political psychology argument, maybe these differences, dislikes and likes do not matter if people still treat the facts in a reasonable way. So political thinking, how people think about politics. So the experiment we did is really simple. We asked 400 respondents, because it's a political psychology experiment, we don't try to sample people, but we try to include people, respondents from all of the parties. So we could compare, we wanted to compare the way they reason about politics. We used the law on pharmacies. You might find it interesting. We thought that it's a neutral topic, eczacılıkla ilgili kanun, because it's about health. Everyone deals with the pharmacies, they deal with the health, so we thought it's going to be a neutral issue. People will not bring their ideological preconceptions to their assessments. And we ask people to assess the accuracy of some of the statements. So let me conclude this really quickly from this experiment. I can explain it during the question and answer session. What we found out that even the pharmacy law we thought would be important for people, the level of knowledge was really low. 70% had no clue about the law. You can say that there are so many laws, it's hard to follow. But we asked about also presidential system because it's in the public debate, and we thought that because people are exposed to these debates, they should know something about presidential system. More than 60% of the AK Party supporters couldn't explain the term, and the awareness and knowledge of the term was a little bit higher among the both Milliyetçi Hareket Partisi and the Cumhuriyet Halk Party supporters, but still overall it was in a high rate. People, when we gave them actual statements, the parts of law, and when we gave them different sources, if we said that AK Party said this or CHP said this, 80% of AK Party supporters thought that the statements were inaccurate, even if they were accurate statements. And around more than 60% of the CHP supporters found accurate statements inaccurate when we attributed the source, when we identified the source as AK Party. So what happens that people do not really care about the accuracy of the statements if they see partisan cues. They base their assessment on the partisan cues. I don't have time, but to summarize all these, political psychology experiments these days, they are dealing with the question, especially American politics, also inflicted by polarization. Can we deal with them? If people reason based on the partisan cues, not the facts, if people have strong dislikes and likes, if there is a way to escape this polarization cycle. There are two different suggestions and solutions. One of them, if people are hit by facts, but right facts, and the right facts are non-partisan facts. If people feel that there are experts, non-partisan experts, institutions and experts can change some of these ideas and preconceived notions. The other one, because affects, emotions play such an important role in these polarization, if people are asked to explain their feelings, they change their roles. We have been doing some experiments on my campus. It's really amazing how people change their position if they are asked to explain, if they are asked to engage with the opposing views. So, 3 sentences. Public is not as polarized as media suggests and the elite suggests. If you look at the numbers, public, especially in terms of issues, public is not as polarized. They don't mirror the elite's positions. But public's effective emotion-based polarization is really concerning because it affects the way people reason about politics. They easily dismiss the opposing party's view regardless. They can be accurate, they just dismiss all these facts. So AK Party's position in this debate, I think, the citizenship, the citizens' ability to reach and to assess information is really important. So maybe one of the challenges facing all of us, our ability to create non-partisan knowledge assessments and also giving citizens room and place to engage with others and to be exposed to information and facts that are not marked by different partisan framing and ideas. I'm so sorry I took so long, but this is really packed.
Okay, we continue with the last speaker of today, yesterday's program, Professor Ayhan Aktar from İstanbul Bilgi University. He is the author of many books, among which we can mention varlık vergisi ve Türkleştirme politikaları, Türk milliyetçiliği, gayrimüslimler ve ekonomik dönüşüm, Nationalism in Troubled Triangle, Cyprus, Greece and Turkey with Niyazi Kızılyürek and Umut Özkırımlı, Yorgo Hacı Dimitriadis'in Aşkare Erzurum Günlüğü 1943, İlginç Zamanlar taraf yazılarından seçmeler 2008-2011. His research interests mainly focus on non-Muslims and state relations in Turkey. And, well, Professor, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mrs. Chairman. Thanks a lot. Does this work? I don't know.
I hope so, maybe.
Okay. All right. First of all, I would like to thank to organizers of this conference at Şehir University. And I find this conference extremely timely. In 10 years' time, if someone is going to write the rise and the fall of Akbar, I think the fall starts with this week. That's what I think, at least. The events in Taksim. The events in Taksim is going to create a lot of havoc in this country. You can be sure about that. Yes, more than 10 years have passed since the AKP election victory in November 2000. And in the last decade, the relationship between non-Muslim minorities and the AK Party government has been extremely positive, coming from the positive moves originating from the government. Thank you. So, televizyon gibi. Yes. There are certain reasons behind this. I said from AKP government, also EU membership process, and the developments in Turkish civil society in general. The change in the treatment of Lausanne minorities, the Greeks, Armenians, and the Jews, could be summarized as a changing climate and mentality coming from the government. I shall try to delineate the reasons behind this transformation, and I shall try to underline the shortcomings of this transformation in my lecture. But let me say a few things about the background of this transformation. I mean, how was it before 2002? What was the condition? What was the milieu in those days? You know, a few months after the formation of Turkish Republic in 23, in 1924, the founding fathers of the Republic decided to draft a new constitution, good old 1924 constitution. When it came to the article number 88, it was related to citizenship. And the draft, the committee preparing the draft, proposed the article as follows: the people of Turkey, regardless of religion and race, are Turks. It was straightforward, clear-cut, a liberal definition of citizenship. This definition created certain problems among the nationalist MPs, and Hamdullah Subhi Bey, later took the surname Tanrı Över, took the floor and said the following things. He said, to call all these people in our borders Turks might be an ideal. That's good. But, you know, we came out of war of independence, and if we say all these people are the citizens of state, Turkish Republic are Turks, you know, this might create problems, because he says we are trying to get rid of Greeks, Armenians, which are employed in the foreign companies, you know, and when we sack them, just because they are Greeks and Armenians, what will they say to us? They can say, no, you cannot do this. According to the laws and regulations approved by your parliament, they are Turks. And he was quite aware of the problem, and he said, let us qualify this definition. And he said openly, this could be used against us. And in 1924, it came like this. The people of Turkey, regardless of religion and race, are Turks as regards to citizenship. This is, I call, citizenship on paper, okay? The non-Muslim minorities in this country, they were able to obtain IDs, get driving licenses, passports, and all the, legal documents, which would make Turkish life meaningful, nüfus hüviyet cüzdanı and all this stuff that we have to carry all the time. But in terms of, enjoying the possibilities of citizenship, till the end, they were not that lucky or that privileged. There were about 340 non-Muslim minorities, non-Muslims, according to 1927 population census. And the attitude of the central authority towards non-Muslim minorities were like undesirable elements. This was an undesirable element inherited from good old Ottoman Empire, and, we have to tolerate them. Although there were some international treaties giving them certain rights. I mean, Article 42 of Lausanne Treaty, on paper, again, protecting all their rights, religious rights, and their pious foundations, etc. But this was not realized in normal life. Lausanne is a beautiful international treaty. It has been violated by Greeks and Turks in so many times that I cannot count it. I mean, it stays on paper too, but it doesn't have any meaning in the daily life. Yes, the legal guarantees were there, but it didn't work out. You can talk about many discriminations happening in the early years of the Republic. For example, non-Muslim minorities were denied of their, public employment. You cannot find any Jewish tax collector, for example, or any Armenian municipality director. You cannot find these characters, but they existed in the Ottoman times. According to the research done by Carter Findlay, 29% of the diplomats or the personnel in the Ottoman Ministry of Foreign Affairs between 1876 up to 1909, which is the period of Abdülhamid II, the Islamist Sultan, they were non-Muslims. Many years, the ambassador to London, Ottoman ambassador, was Muzurus Pasha. There was no problem from the point of Ottoman understanding. They were denied carrying arms in military service. They didn't even have military training. As in the case of capital tax of 1942-43, they were expropriated economically. Or in the case of 1934 June, Jewish pogrom of Thrace, they were kicked out of their lands which they were born. Also, we can talk about September 1955 riots in Istanbul, which was another kind of a pogrom which created a lot of bad things for the minorities. The dominant policy of the single-party period was Turkification, and all non-Turk elements, except non-Muslims, were Turkified, and they were taken under the great umbrella of Turkishness. You can say that, I'm Circassian, no problem, you're a Turk. I'm Bosnian, come along, you're part of the Turkishness. I'm Albanian, no problem. We came from Central Asia, we went as far as Albania, no problem. But when it comes to, I'm a Jew, no. In this geography, we cannot tolerate hyphenated identities. In the United States, you can easily say that I'm a Japanese American, I'm Armenian American, Turkish American. But in this country, also in Greece and Arab lands, you cannot say that I'm a Jewish Turk or I'm an Armenian Turk. This is oxymoron in our political language, unfortunately. Yes, and if you follow the things happened, I don't want to go into detail, the Turkification of capital and labor market, the law of obligatory use of Turkish language in commercial exchange. Also, this enabled some of the people to get unemployed, employment in public sector, and the definition of getting a memur to the public service is saying in 1926, Memurin Kanunu, if you want to be a state employee, you have to be a Turk. And this went on until 1965, and they redrafted it in a proper way. If you want to be a state employee, you have to be a Turkish citizen. But in 1955, there was no one left. As a part of, statistical thing, you can take a look at this thing, and you can see the number of non-Muslims are decreasing throughout years. In 1960, we have information, official information, until 1965. But later, we have informal information. It shows that non-Muslims in Turkey are like endangered species, like kelaynak kuşları, kareta tortoise, and so on. These are the numbers of the State Department in the year of 2013. AKP came to power having this type of a background of treatment of minorities in Turkey. They did great things, in my opinion. EU accession process, first of all, enabled the AKP government to implement certain policies to ease up the situation. One of the first things they did, they changed the functioning of Vakıflar Genel Müdürlüğü, or the General Directorate of Pious Foundations. They tried to ease up the situation because Turkish public bureaucracy has created such a straitjacket for non-Muslim minorities that it was impossible for them to move around. In 1936, when the law passed, original law passed, they asked the minority foundations to declare their properties, which they did, and then they never accepted any additional property. For example, if a rich Greek died in 1955 and wanted to donate his house or his office building to one foundation, it could not have been achieved. Hrant Dink's history of his orphanage in Tuzla is a great story about this property business. Again, the Turkish public practice or administrative practice was to say that, yes, I mean, there are foundations and there are communities, individuals, but they do not have any connection at all. This connection was denied, from beginning of the Republic. In 2008, as a result of the pressures also coming from European Union, the foundation law was amended to allow foundations to change their scope or purpose from that specified upon the original incorporation and to permit the Armenian Orthodox, Greek Orthodox, and Jewish communities to have one elected individual in the Vakıflar Higher Council. That was a very positive thing. According to the report published by the United States Commission on the International Religious Freedom in April 2013, Vakıflar had received around 1,400 applications for the return of some of the confiscated property, which enabled new law for the application. That is very important. Between 2008 and August 2011, approximately 200 properties were reportedly returned to their original foundations. And after August 2011, until January 2013, some 300 additional properties worth about $1.5 billion have been returned to minority foundations. This is very important. Also, there were pressures coming from European Court of Human Rights. This is related to the Greek Orthodox orphanage on the Turkish island of Büyükada. They passed the verdict, they ruled out that, and in late November 2010, the property was transferred into Patriarchate. Another important item was the circular of AKP government to Turkish public bureaucracy in May 2010, signed by Prime Minister Erdogan himself. This is a revolutionary thing, to be honest. I mean, all the wording and the treatment of minority logic is extremely important, and this circular made a great impact locally and internationally. I mean, in that circular, all non-Muslim minorities have the right to enjoy and maintain their own identities and cultures in parallel to the national identity and culture of Turkey. All government institutions and agencies must prevent any infringements on the rights of non-Muslims. Also, the last thing, it was banning a kind of a hate speech against minorities. These are revolutionary things. Again, another important thing happened in August 2010. The famous monastery in Trabzon, Sümela, has been opened for the Virgin Mary Day in August for praying and liturgy service. That was extremely important, and it created a lot of repercussions in Turkey and abroad. Again, a month later, in September 2010, thousands of worshippers got together in the island and Aktar in Van, which was abandoned since 1915 and again renovated by Vakıflar Genel Müdürlüğü. This was an important thing too. In terms of tete-a-tete relations, those visits were extremely important. We see Deputy Prime Minister Bülent Arınç visiting Ecumenical Patriarch Bartholomeus I. That was a very important move, and it created very good image internally and internationally. But when all these things were happening, there is a strange tennis game was going on. The government, AKP government, was doing some very positive moves as a reaction now. For example, Turkish High Court, Yargıtay, passes a verdict that Istanbul-based Orthodox Patriarch is only the head of the city's tiny Greek Orthodox community and cannot be regarded as ecumenical and that cannot be seen as the religious leader of 300 million Orthodox Christians all around the world. Now, here, Turkish Yargıtay acts like a religious council. A bunch of bureaucrats in Ankara come together and decide about the inner functioning of a sect which has 300 million members throughout the world. This is Turkish absurdity, but it happens. And this tennis game goes on. For example, Prime Minister Erdogan goes to Athens in May 2010 and he says, Turkish government has no issue with the title of ecumenical. In Turkish, Türk hükümetinin ekumenik meseleyle ilişkisi yoktur. Veya, as one of the ministers said, this is the part of Orthodox Shariat, this was the answer. This tennis match was going on. However, there were some structural problems, that is, reciprocity. Lausanne International Treaty put forward certain rights of the minorities in the Article 37 to 42, and they said these things are valid also on the other side of the Aegean. This was explained as a reciprocity. This is not reciprocity, this is parallel requirement, first of all. However, it was a kind of a tendency within the Turkish diplomats to say that, okay, if they want us to open up Halki Seminary, let them open up a mosque in Athens first. Yes, Athens is an absurd city. It is the only city in a capital city in Europe where there is no mosque, which is obvious. This is an absurdity. But using the concept of reciprocity and denying the rights of Turkish citizens who are non-Muslim but again Turkish citizens is creating an extremely complicated situation for the individuals living in this country. Here is a kind of a few examples from today's Zaman, from Hürriyet, in order to show that, you know, Prime Minister Erdogan goes to Doha, meets with Samaras, Greek Prime Minister, and says, okay, we are planning to open up Halki School in Heybeliada. Why don't you think about, you know, considering the opening of a mosque in Athens? I know you are in economic crisis, but we can pay the money, don't worry about it. You know, this type of things. Again, there has been an important move to employ minorities in the public bureaucracy. European Union General Secretariat in Ankara opened up a position. A young Armenian, graduate of Robert College, London School of Economics, he has an MA in International Relations, speaking 3 languages, applied for this job. This is the headlines from Hürriyet. Okay? And the title is, Devlette görev alacak ilk Ermeni, Hispanic, you know. Why on earth we have this? Because it's unheard of it. Okay? Yes, I'm finishing up. Now, if you talk to the minorities, they are very happy with the AKP government's 10 years of rule. They say, first time in the history of Republic, we are treated like a human being. We are taken into consideration and so on. This situation reminds me of the days of 1942 when Prime Minister Saracoğlu comes to power and he's contemplating about varlık vergisi, capital tax, and representatives of Istanbul non-Muslim minorities go to Ankara and congratulate him because he's appointed as the Prime Minister. And they say, we know the rumors, you know, you're planning to pass a law and collect some money. Sir, how much you are thinking of raising through the tax? Do you want to raise 300 million or do you want to raise 2? You leave this to us. We'll collect the money and give it to you. This is very Ottoman. This is very Ottoman. These people are ruled by the Ottoman Empire for 400 years. They can collect the money. They can give it to the government. And Saracoğlu answers back, how can we accept this offer? We are a modern nation state. And we know what they did. Now, yes, the situation and the status of minorities were extremely bad throughout the Republican period until 2002. They were in minus. Now they are in plus. But at the moment, their position is not much of a different from a zimmi protected by the Ottoman rule. Are they going to be citizens? We'll become together. If we have a decent constitution, we will. But I'm not very optimistic after the last 48 hours. And, sorry, this is in Turkish. A recent article by Herkül Milas. Herkül Milas was a graduate of Robert College, national athlete, 100 and 200 meters Turkish records. And he moved to Athens. And he's writing at Zaman, and he's talking that, he says, I have never been treated as an equal citizen. And all the guarantees which are given in Turkish constitution were denied to me. Whenever the states observed something bad on the other side of Aegean, they held me as a kind of a hostage. And he says, in the recent years, certain rights were given to the minorities, but I do not want to be considered as a part of a community, religious community. He says, I am an individual. I want to secure my individual citizenship rights. That's, I think, is the most important thing in the agenda. Thanks a lot for your patience.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank all three presenters for their very interesting contributions. And I would like to continue now with questions and answers. I guess we have some time. Okay. Maybe we can take the questions as clusters, like Ümit Hoca did in the morning. Any questions for the presenters? Yes, we have some questions, but should I wait for the microphone or? Okay, it's coming. Yes, please.
My question is for Professor Atasoy. Thank you for your presentation. And this morning, Yalçın Akdoğan talked about AKP's vision and the story of it for the last 10 years. And one of the things he mentioned is they're aware of the women's issue and women's problems. And you worked on headscarf issues and how whatever measures taken over the last 10 years and maybe other women's issues other than headscarf. For instance, during the elections, were there any like headscarf women candidates, how they were treated, how they were supported or not. So I was wondering, what do you think, how are these issues are addressed by the government? Headscarf issue and beyond, women's issues in this country.
Okay, shall we first gather some? Maybe we can also hear the other questions. Yes, there was another. Yes, okay.
I have two quick questions, one for Ayhan Hoca. Hocam, how do you think is the discourse of, for instance, the government and the Prime Minister has an impact on the implementation of these laws for the protection of the minorities? And
Which discourse you are talking about?
For instance, saying, they have called me, I apologize, room, kind of discourse.
Oh, I see. Okay. Affedersiniz Ermeni.
Evet. And also, do we have any legislation of hate speech, and do you think this will go for the good of the minorities, or is it going to be more in the direction of protecting the Muslims and the Sunni Muslims in particular? And Sultan Hoca, I have a question. How do you think we will go through the regime discussions in terms of presidentialism in this polarized environment, atmospheres? Do you think this will have an impact, and how can this public overcome these issues of creating a regime change without any debate, any meaningful debate, if it's only based on party affiliation? Thank you.
Okay, let's take another question, and then yes, we can continue.
Ahmet Yükleyen, University of Mississippi. My question is for Dr. Aktar. Ayhan Hocam, what do you think, are there any signs among the non-Muslim citizens of this country with regards to the discussions on the redefinition of the citizenship law for the hopefully upcoming new constitution?
Okay, thank you very much. Maybe we can start with Professor Yıldız Atasoy, then
Sure.
continue.
Thank you for the question. I should say this before I talk about what I think about what Aktar is doing in relation to women's issues. My research doesn't focus on identity issues at all. My research is on a neoliberal political economy and its relation to liberal democracy and how it links up with Islamic politics. This is what I do. And my research focuses on how the AK Party actually has deepened neoliberal market economy model in Turkey, but it's a very complicated process because the other issues such as women's headscarf issue, minority issues, Alawi issues, etc., are part of this process as these groups are making claims about recognition. They're being recognized by the state, etc. So in that regard, women's issues are extremely important for AK Party, I believe. The neoliberal market economy may not have been accepted by many because it also generates big gap. Even though there is a rise in the middle classes in Turkey, there is also a gap between those who do not make enough to support themselves. Nevertheless, the critical perspective on neoliberal market economy is not as much because these people are also being included in the process of being recognized in terms of their issues. That's why actually I think that neoliberal political economy should be seen as a contextual process, which includes women's issues, minority issues, religious issues, citizenship issues. That is my main argument. So from that perspective, I mean, if you go back to how the AK Party and women do work together, I think the Welfare Party before it was much more women-oriented than AK Party. On the other hand, I examined AK Party's 2023 political vision report. Actually, Yalçın Akdoğan said the same thing, that he said that they are working towards the women's employment issues. They want to increase the level from 28% to 30-something%. That is the main idea behind their work on women's issues. And I strongly believe that actually they abandoned women. They withdraw their support on women. Nowadays, I mean, I'm seeing actually in this campus as well, there are more women with headscarves attending this conference, for example, or going to school, but it's very arbitrarily done issue. There is no policy support in general for these women. Some universities are allowing these women to go to school, some are not, etc. It's very arbitrarily done, arbitrarily sort of evolving or unfolding process. But what I feel is that women have their own agency. I think that they discovered that they have their own agency independent of political parties. And I think in that regard, women are articulating their concerns in terms of being trust networks, societal trust networks. It is not a matter of trusting or not trusting them at the psychological level, but a more sociological and political level. At a more political level, there is a trust network formation in Turkey, and women are agents in that process. In that regard, I feel that women have more transformational agency than AK Party. That may prove, I don't know how it's going to work out. I have no idea, but at the moment, actually, I also feel that AK Party is feeding on their own agency. So that is an interesting issue. So we will see how the women are going to react or respond to this in the near future. If the AK Party male leadership does not do anything about their concerns, women might do something else. But I think it's a very progressive moment, though. It's a very progressive moment in the sense that women, probably religious women, I'm not generalizing the other women as well, but religious women, more pious women, probably for the first time in Turkish Republican history discovered that they have their own agency, independent of political parties. And bargaining power. And in that regard, actually, what we might see for the near future, that the democratization process will work through another process called negotiated consent. There will be a dynamic process of negotiation. And I think that is for the future of Turkish politics, let's say, Turkish state politics maybe, we might see a better result because women are seeing themselves as independent from political parties. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. Maybe.
Okay.
I don't know if I can.
Yes, the terminology, the political discourse, saying, excuse me, I'm not an Armenian, etc., will that contribute to the democratization? That's the question. Let me tell you one thing. I mean, the process of democratization is a very complicated process, and all around the world, it's not achieved by politically correct, polite, self-respecting, intellectuals. If you think about the transition in Spain, for example, from the Franco regime to, modern democratic system, this was done by Franquistas. The guys or the persons or the leaders or the political elites who are going to achieve democratization, in my opinion, are not supposed to be democrats in their daily life. Yes, I know I'm keeping my expectations very low, but when I was a youngster, I used to read some of the Marxist classics, and I remember one statement from Chairman Mao. As long as the cat is catching the mouse, it's not important whether this cat is a tomcat or a yellow cat. Okay. I know their language is nasty, it's not elegant, but if they can do certain things, personally, me and non-Muslim minorities I know would tolerate that. And you are asking, what is the origin of it? What is the ideological background of this non-Muslim minority opening, let's say? I thought about it. I don't want to make big claims, but, in international relations, political science terminologies, there are certain concepts moving up in the air. One is neo-Ottomanism, okay, in Turkish foreign policy. It might be related to that. I mean, if I am going to be a neo-Ottoman, then I should treat non-Muslims like Zimmi. And I should take the members of non-Muslim communities not as individual citizens, but as the members of a certain confessional group. That could be a perspective. I'm not sure. Okay, think about, again, the experience of the AKP elite. Because of their, religious convictions, these people were treated very badly by the Kemalist system. Therefore, when they come to power, they have kind of an elective affinity for the other religious groups which have been badly treated throughout the Republican period. This feeling of beaten up by the same, desperado in the neighborhood might develop a feeling of solidarity. Because of me being a Muslim, I was treated bad. Because of you being a Greek, you are treated bad, and let's shake hands type of attitude. Again, a more sophisticated approach might be dialogue of civilizations. With the Spanish Prime Minister Erdogan had good relations, and he really believed in it. This might be, all these factors might contribute for the easing up. And our colleague over there asked, what will be the citizenship rights of the non-Muslim minorities in the upcoming new constitution, if it ever comes? New constitution in Turkey is like waiting for Godot, Beckett. As far as I know, that group in Ankara, Uzlaşma Komisyonu, in the parliament, have invited ecumenical patriarch, and they had a long session. And again, this was something very positive from the point of non-Muslim minorities. I mean, they have been invited to Ankara. They were listened by a committee formed in the parliament. This was important. But in this country, We all know the recipes of the dishes, but we never cook them. Okay. From now on, I believe in Herakles Milas's words. I don't think that Turkish citizens should be considered within communities, within religious confession groups. They should be taken as individuals. Individual citizenship rights are the most important things, and this seems to be the crux of the matter. Okay, thank you.
Really good. Maybe I can follow up on that. There's a really good article called Mismeasurement of Political Man by John Dryzek, and he makes this point that if you rely on surveys too much, especially political leaders, and if you rely on election ballots, booths, and surveys, we get rid of the agency. We treat people as in clusters, and we really do not treat them as individuals. Maybe this is one of the challenges. A couple of things that I couldn't cover: the low political interest in Turkey. Despite all these debates, only 46% say that they are interested in politics, and the numbers are declining. And also people rely more and more on social networks. And if you ask them about the newspapers and the TV channels, what we see almost like epistemic communities. That means that people choose their sources and rely on their networks. So this is one of the reasons why people are concerned about polarization, because it creates these antagonistic communities or individuals. They just want to talk to like-minded people. This cross-group dialogue or interactions are really limited. So if you're going through a regime change, or if you're going to come up with a new constitution, I think there are all these risks. One of the questions about AK Party, it's part of neoliberal project, and one of the neoliberal project's criticism is that it reduces politics to management. You just create all these management problems instead of giving people voice in this process. I'm afraid we're seeing a bit of it, because if you're talking about presidential regimes, and if the supporter of the idea, if the constituency of the party do not really understand the term, there's a big risk, because polarization creates this public discourse about wrongs and rights and goods and bads. Even the peace process, I think, if you're against peace, it's bad. So this sort of dichotomy, or creating a public discourse that everything becomes a binary, doesn't allow any room for deliberation and contemplation. I think this is one of the questions about all these changes, that as much as the party wants to promote the idea that it's bottom-up, it's more rooted in society, all these transformations and all these reforms are saying that it could be quite the opposite. This idea of we're rooted in public doesn't really justify all these politics. And we have been hearing a lot about opposition and lack of opposition, and even the chief advisor said that we're lucky in a way. But this discourse that delegitimized the opposition also co-opted some of the opposition. One of the interesting findings, Halkın Sesi, People's Voice Party, was really important opposition, but it disappeared. I think this idea that opposition has nothing to say, delegitimizing it, it's different, because you're saying that you're starting the discussion saying that you have nothing to say, and also co-opting some important opposition. It creates a field that politics is not only managerial, but alternative voices are really muted. So that's not the ideal environment for a sustainable political reform. So I think it's easy for us political scientists to create this ideal public and talk about citizenry, but it's also important to create this in practice. Also, it's important to create a room for civil society institutions, especially Ayhan Bey's comment that today a civil society movement was suppressed brutally. It's a sign that these sort of voices are delegitimized and not heard. So that doesn't really say that the constitution writing process will be all-inclusive and it will be sustained, because it will come from the top. It's unfortunate, because the party's promise was to do quite the opposite, to create all these reforms from bottom up.
Thank you very much. We can take another round. Well, there's a question and okay. There will be another. Yeah, this gentleman in the second. Yes, okay.
Thank you. Ludwig Schultz, Munich University. Ms. Chairwoman, I would have 3 questions for all the panelists, however short ones.
Okay.
So I may
We
go
will
from
see. Okay,
I may
let's
go
see.
from right to
Let's
left, maybe.
first see the questions, then we'll start.
Okay. Sultan Tepe, one question for you. This polarization discourse that you mentioned, which is quite strong here in Turkey, could you imagine that this polarization discourse itself is, to add another binary that you mentioned right now, is itself in contrast to this, harmonious society on our Ottoman heritage that we have? I mean, this course that is mentioned by the government itself, by the AKP, that we are a harmonious society, we can live all together in modern Turkey, in postmodern Turkey, that you have these 2 discourses of the polarization one and this modern harmonious one, and the question of course is then which of these 2 discourses may win, because it's the clash of discourses on hegemony. You know what I mean?
What is the last part, sir? I couldn't. Which of these discourses are?
I mean the discourse of the AKP itself, saying we have a Turkish society, but we have minorities. We can live all together. We just need to have a very well managed government in this country like us. We do not even need the opposition, so we can live together here. But the polarization discourse is something quite different. It says that okay, we have to have different interests. We have to have different opinions. We have to fight against each other more or less in parliament. You know what I mean?
I think I'm getting your question. I'm not really sure.
Okay, maybe you can continue.
Maybe Yıldız, Atasoy, a question for you. This discrimination of veiled women in Turkey that you mentioned, can you contextualize it also into the general discrimination of women in a male-dominated society such as Turkey? I mean, we have the same structures also in the West. And maybe then the veiled discrimination or the discrimination against veiled women is just maybe a very strong moment of this. And Ayhan, Aktar, I was asking myself, or wondering, when you mentioned that the EU helped the AKP government in 2002 to ease the situation, to ease up the situation. Could you imagine this? There is just a very big kind of reciprocity issue, that the minority issue here in Turkey and the reform and the opening up towards non-Muslim minorities stops at that moment when the AKP, and the moment we had already, when the AKP realizes that the discrimination of Turkish people in Europe is more or less the same. So that means that there comes the big reciprocity issue. The Turkish government has to tell the European Union, okay, when you're opening up towards Turkish citizens and discrimination there, then we're gonna go on with our anti-discrimination, opening up politics against non-Muslims here in Turkey as well.
Okay, let me say. Can I start?
One moment. Maybe we can take the question.
Your title, I was ecstatic, because this is a palpable issue in Turkey. Polarization is an extreme issue. And if you have noticed today, none of the speakers talked about it, including the representatives of the party, the practitioners, as we call it. So I thought, to touch upon polarization as a concept and to demystify it in a scientific way is a welcome effort. So I congratulate you on that. However, it's just a small, caveat to what we've been talking about. Of course, it has a huge impact on democratization, this issue, as you already said. A society, a kind of society inflicted with ethnic, regional, religious, ideological polarization can make a transition into full democracy. I don't know. That's the question. But what bothered me in your speech was, in your presentation, was the help you received from political psychology only, you know, rather than constitutional law, structural elements, political science itself. Because when I was in America, I heard this, I'm sure you keep hearing it about it. Oh, the polarization in America between the Republicans and the Democrats has gone to such an extent that we've turned into Turkey, we've turned into a parliamentary democracy, they say. So they associated with parliamentarianism, parliamentary democracy. So maybe you could look at those more mundane structural elements as well. And one last thing, what really scares me about polarization is the fact that it's not healthy because it prevents a healthy analysis of how secularism, because this is our problem, secularism and irtija are constituted at the level of consciousness. We don't know. We can't analyze it because we are polarized. That's why I think your study has a lot to offer, and I'm very excited about it.
Okay. Yeah, there are. Okay, we can start with you.
I really shared your resistance to political psychology, especially I'm at an institution that psychology is so powerful. But at the same time, what I wanted to do is contextualize our debate a little bit, because kutuplaşma is part of daily discourse. It's used in such a way, the boring political science stuff, this deconstruction of the term, suggested that we really need to be careful when we use the term. But political psychology, I agree with you, it has this urge to fix the problems instead of understanding the roots of the problem, especially in American politics. There's this issue-based polarization. I think this is the important part, and the emergence of the Tea Party is attesting to this. It's not necessarily along the party lines. It's based on the issues, gay marriage, tax, and all these sort of things. What is interesting and maybe promising in Turkish case, issues are not as divisive as the other countries. So it seems that there is this potential to create this conciliatory, or maybe the politics that will favor and have room for compromise a little bit more, because it seems that public is more open to these compromises. If you ever, I'm pretty sure many of you watch Tuesday group speeches at the parliament. The discourse, one of the reasons I came up with this topic, I was watching one of the TV shows, and one of these well-known and popular anchors said that this is like a football game. You can't be referee. So suggesting all the citizens should pick up a team. You can't just watch a game as bystanders. So this notion of media and elite polarization, I think there is room for us to understand to what extent they reflect on people. But many of the issues, I think this question that, are we creating another discourse just to challenge Aktar's discourse that everything is harmonious, you know, all these groups. So is this a counter discourse? This is why I was really careful when we look at the term. We need to look at its multiple layers. And even at the public level, this issue-based, ideology-based, and affect, the emotion-based, I think if we look at them, we're not necessarily creating a counter-discourse saying that it's not as harmonious. I think it's almost making us more aware of the different parts of the political equations, because of the elite's roles and the public roles are really different. But what is really concerning for all of us who study political science and democracy, citizenship, citizenry, it's the fundamental part of any politics. And what we see in Turkish politics, in a way, the imposition of some of the ideas by elite. I think this counter discourse is not necessarily to create an alternative public statement, but to make us remember that democracy about demos, people, and where are these people? We can't only have people every 5 years or 2 years. So this public discourse is not a fantasy of political scientists. It's really important. And someone, Yıldız Hanım, said that welfare was better with women's issues. And I think at some point, I remember when I was in college as a college student, hearing really interesting debates on some of the important issues about Islam and about democracy. These debates are gone, and I don't think we should take it for granted. I don't think we should say that we have a well-working political machine out there. As a result, we should just be pleased that we have certain laws and new practices. Foundation of democracy in demos. We don't have demos as strong as we're supposed to have at this point, given that this is an age of reform. So I think I understand your point about counter discourse, but I don't see that this is just to create another discourse to say that we're divided, we're not harmonious. It's to remind us basics of politics. Yeah, I think. I was amazed. Polarization is a term kutuplaşma used more zaman than any other newspapers. If you look at the newspapers, Milliyet uses it 600 times over the last 10 years. If you look at Hürriyet, it's a little bit more. If you look at Zaman, it's 2,000 plus. So I think the uses of the term is a different issue, but as political scientists, how we understand these different divisions, I think we need to differentiate it too. But just like any political science term, like democracy, these terms lend itself to political use as well as analytical use.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, the Turks in Western Europe, or mostly in Germany, have been a kind of an object of debate in this country, but not related to non-Muslim minorities. Islamist movement in this country suffered a lot, pressures coming from central authority, especially in the years of coup d'etat or after coup d'etat. They always, talked about how the Turkish Gastarbeiters had certain rights in Germany in terms of practicing their religion, having headscarf, and so on. Yes, the position or the status of Turks in Germany or in Western Europe could be compared with the Greeks, Armenians, and Jews in this country, but Turkish politicians didn't do that. Okay? I don't think that they'll ever do it. That's what my sincere opinion.
Okay, thank you very much. In terms of discrimination of women in Turkey, women have been discriminated everywhere in the world. It is not unique to Turkey. It is not specific to Turkey. It's not historically specific to this or to that country at all. So it's therefore very difficult, too big a question to deal with, to tackle, so I won't do that. But what I will say is that actually women have been struggling a lot everywhere in the world, and either through this state or political parties or independent of the state, and again everywhere in the world. And there are a variety of feminist groups, liberal feminists, radical feminists, socialist feminists, etc., etc. But for liberal feminists, main issue is to increase their capacity through education and be able to earn a wage income. So in that regard, actually, Ak Party is doing better than other political parties. They said that we want to increase women's earning capacity. This is what they said in their reports. That part of the reason is that because women's employment rate in Turkey is one of the lowest, 28% or something, and it's not acceptable. And they are smart enough to realize this. However, what is important and not acknowledged is that actually women's formal employment might be low, but women's informal employment might be quite high, and that has never been documented. There are data, it's extremely difficult to collect data on informal sector, but it is known that the size of informal sector in Turkish economy is huge, and women's involvement in that, I believe, is really large, but it has never been spoken out. So that is a major issue, I believe, which the Ak Party and other political parties actually, it's not an Ak Party issue, it's a question for many that needs to be dealt with. In that regard, what is important actually or interesting about AK Party in this context, AK Party has made something unacceptable, such as the enlargement of neoliberal market economy model acceptable, or morally, ethically acceptable by allowing historically discriminated groups in society, because of their religious orientations, practices, beliefs, etc., they incorporated them, or they at least wanted to incorporate them into the process. So in this sense, actually, even though they tackled the women's headscarf issue at the beginning, they gave up. They were extremely intimidated by the bureaucracy. So that is an important issue. And we can see, actually, in my work, I link that to trust issue, but not in a social psychological way, but in terms of the formation of trust networks in society. Charles Tilly is a great, or was a great historian and sociologist who developed a thesis on the connection between trust and democracy. And another person, Richard Sennett, writes a lot about respect as the foundational base for the expansion of the democracy. So trust and respect are very foundational for the expansion of state capacity to incorporate other groups into it. That is something that the Turkish state is lacking. Because in my case, in my argument, women's issues have been abandoned, given up. So I expect that actually women will do their own work, and they are doing their own work in organizing themselves into a trust network, societal trust network. And that cannot be dismissed or ignored. It's a very important issue, and I think in that regard, that's my argument, the transformational possibility is based on the movement itself. Not women, not men, not political party, etc., but the movement itself. And there is a movement going on in Turkey. That is important, I believe, to recognize. Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you very much. I would like to close today's program session. Thank you very much for the attention and the participation. Yeah, thank you.